If you want to be trad, go be Amish, especially if you're religious. Like, they'll outlive us all. Like, they've got a way better situation when it comes to being trad. Got this meme. I'm gonna read it off for you from Trad West. So I jump on Twitter every now and then. I actually deleted Instagram off my phone, and when I do that, I end up getting on Twitter, which is better for the show. So better content comes your way. I need to spend more time on Twitter and burn Instagram to the ground. But I see some fun memes on there, and I follow like there's like this trend with trad, traditional wives and traditional living and trad life, which I kind of dig. It's also like cringy as fuck, right? Like I get what you're saying, and I think that that's really cool. I think a lot of people are also just like grifting on that, and it's not that way at all. I mean, you can't be that trad when you're filming something on your iPhone. Let's be real. Like, Amish people are trad, right? Like that's a traditional. You want to be trad, go be Amish, right? Especially if you're religious. Like, they seem to have, they'll outlive us all. Like, they've got a way better situation when it comes to being trad, like barn raisings and shit. It's wild. But anyways, I shared this meme. I've seen this a bunch of times. Dan Crenshaw also shared something like this, which was really dumb. But Dan Crenshaw hasn't said anything intelligent in a couple years, maybe. Anyways, moving on here. It says, saving the environment, in quotes. And it's a field, like a massive, like thousands of acres of solar panels. And then it says, ruining the environment. And it just shows some cows by a barn that are actually not even actually in that field. They're photoshopped into that, into this photo. Those cows actually aren't even standing there. They're photoshopped into a photo of a barn. So what they're saying here is that solar panels covering up all this ground is it's hypocritical to say it's saving the environment while the cows are ruining the environment. Which, yes, I think the idea that cows are like causing climate change and all that shit and that carbon cycling doesn't exist is propaganda and lies and stupid. I think the best thing we can do for the environment, and I don't think about climate. Like, climate isn't my thing. I'm not like, oh, it's the climate, it's this. That's too arbitrary. I think about the environment, the shit that we live in day to day, the things we breathe in, things we put in our body. That's what I think about. Let's bring it that. Let's localize that. What's your air quality like? What's your water like? We want to think, people that want to talk about the climate all the time want you to be distracted by the climate, something that moves slowly, that has kind of arbitrary effects, that may or may not. They've been saying that there's going to be an ice age, there's going to be global. They've been saying this same shit for 50, 60 years. It doesn't make any sense. Now, are we having an impact on the climate because of driving a bunch of cars and shit? Yeah, I'm sure that's not super helpful. Let's just be real, right? I don't think the world was kind of geared up for that. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that plastic in the ocean is a problem. Chemicals and toxins in our water is a problem. Low quality air, brake dust in the air, if you live near a highway, is a problem. These are all real things that we can actually do something about. But instead, we focus on something that's so big and so obscure, and so obtuse, that it's very, like, you might influence it by 0.005 degrees over the next 100 years. When we can put all those resources into cleaning plastic out of the ocean that we created. It make the misalignment there is insane. That's why I like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because he talks about the environment more than the climate, which is objectively more important. But these memes, you see these memes coming out, and like, oh, this is gross. Look at all these solar panels ruining the skyline, ruining the landscape. And look at these peaceful cows. Right. First off, these cows aren't in a feedlot, but most cows live the majority of their life, 80% or so, on grass. And they get moved to a feedlot, fattened up for the last couple months, and then slaughtered. Unless you get grass-fed, grass-finished beef, which is great, or if you hunt your own food, which is even better. Now, if we think about this right here, this solar field, I'm going to bring up a few other things that could fit in that same box. Here is an oil spill in the ocean. Not lit. Not lit. A lot of people will say, well, oil is actually how we save the environment. Doesn't seem to be the case there. Moving on here. Oh, wait, here we go. Here's an island of trash floating in the ocean. An island of trash. Can we put that on the meme? Does that go on the meme? These people that are very pro-Western civilization, can we put that on the meme for something? No? Okay, moving on. Oh, here's an oil field that looks very similar. It's funny how similar this sea of pumping units is to the sea of solar panels. Not a blade of grass to be seen. Oh, there's some bushes back there in the back. There's some bushes there. Now, the oil field I grew up in did not have this density of pumping units and did this density of wells. I don't understand why there's that many wells. They must just have a really juicy zone right here, and they're just pumping the shit out of it. But I've never seen this many. I think I've seen more, maybe 5 or 6 pumping units in one general like area if we're covering like an acre. But this is dozens, and it just keeps going. And there's more and more like this. There's a lot of how they do it in California. I think these are like really deep wells as well, but I don't really know all the details, but this is a lot of oil wells in one area, and not much can happen here. There's not much that can go on here, right? So you think about that. Oil spills in the ocean ruin local economies, local fishing, fishing guides and things like that. People that rely on sea life to create a living for themselves destroys that. Plastic in the ocean does the same thing to varying degrees in different industries as well. People that rely on these things, right? And it's insane. But if you go ahead and look, and it's like, okay, well, solar is so bad for all these reasons. Here we have a little flock of sheep just grazing with some solar panels in the back. They're in a solar farm. There's a right of way right through the middle there. And these sheep are just hanging out and grazing. And just like a tree or something like that, these sheep, when it gets hot, will go lay down under these solar panels and they'll exist. So this is an interesting thing because you look at this, right? And I've dealt with like oil leaks and saltwater leaks, like stuff like that in the oil field. And it sucks. It kills everything. It's not fun. Every now and then a cow will get caught up in a pumping unit in the weights and get ripped to pieces, which is it's not that big of a deal, really. It's one cow, but like it's a pain in the ass. And the ranchers hate it. And every time that happens, it's like a prized world-class piece of cattle. You know what I mean? It's not like just another cow. It's like, no, that was the special cow. It's worth at least $10,000 more. Which is always funny to watch the pumper and the oil field people like get into it with the ranchers over like how much a cow is worth. Hilarious. They should just like fight to the death over it. It's really funny. But anyways, you can do a lot with these areas, right? You get a lot of sun exposure. You can graze animals on them, right? Animals don't have a lot of issues living out there. Okay. And the same thing with solar fields, right? They do kill birds. That's not a myth. They do kill hawks and eagles and stuff like that. That sucks. But just like Thomas Sowell says, which conservatives love to like elicit the words of Thomas Sowell without really like applying them to their own life. There's no solutions. There's just trade-offs. So maybe when it comes to this, right, we need to, because I think everybody has been told to be so steadfast. It's oil and gas is the way, or solar and wind is the way, or nuclear is the way. It's going to take a robust and varied adjustment to sustain the way that we live. Because the way that we live is unsustainable. That's the thing, right? That's the thing. It's like the way we live is unsustainable. So we need to change the way we do things to sustain our way of living. And the tug of war is over that, but nobody really wants to have that conversation. And it's odd to me, right? Because the same people that think oil and gas is the way also praise innovation, but seems to think that we can't innovate our way away from oil and gas. And not that we ever will. We need oil and gas for a lot of other reasons besides driving around. And I think the idea of going all electric is not consequence-free either. It's trade-offs, right? It's absolutely trade-offs. One other thing I wanted to show is a strip mine, though. Must have not pulled that up. A strip mine, same thing. When they strip mine for cobalt, it's not consequence-free. What we can do and should do is create a robust, varied response, in my opinion, and make sure that people are not being exploited without compensation for the resources we need to move forward. But that's just not the way that humanity has worked, right? If we zoom out, the have-nots get exploited, so the haves can have what they have. And that's, and if it's so, it doesn't speak much to our society that that's the way that we live, right? If you go watch the show Trafficked with Mariana Van Tiller? Mariana's her name. I forget her last name. But Trafficked on National Geographic. I think you can watch it on Hulu. You can stream it. Streaming's gotten out of hand, but you can stream it. She talks about trafficking oil and gas, like underground refineries in the Congo. Like the Congo is a very resource-rich place. It's also full of corruption and exploitation. These people will just siphon off crude oil and refine it themselves in a really like janky way. Super dangerous and sketch. But that's why it happens, because these people are being exploited in the same way that the United States exploited most of South America and Cuba, which led to them becoming communist. But we can't take responsibility for our part in that, because it's the evils of the communists, right? It's not it could not be the God-fearing angels that live in the United States, the home of the red, white, and blue, right? Couldn't be that. We can't have anything to do with it. So it's wild to see this, right? You see this meme here, this solar field meme with these cattle, and you're like, oh man, come to find out, they're not mutually exclusive. Cattle can graze in solar farms. Sheep can graze in solar farms. If the panels are high enough and spread out enough, you can do a lot with that. Well, you could raise quail and pheasant in a solar farm. You can do all kinds of stuff. And I don't understand why we can't have a nuanced conversation. We have to be siloed into these camps. And again, this manufactured pretend reasons to hate each other over things where productive dialogue is the preferred and really easily attainable method to solving these problems.